We've all heard the quote from Trump's rally speech several years ago that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters. Well, I've been a supporter of his for his entire administration now, and I'm making this video because of what I discovered. And there are certain ideologies that are so offensive to me as both a Christian and an American that even if I've been behind one party since I hit puberty and became a man, when I discover something that so offends me to the core, I have to leave. So I hope you all watch this video and see what I discovered, whether you're a supporter of Donald Trump and have fought all these claims of him being a racist, or you despise Donald Trump. You need to watch this to the very end if, like me, you are principled and not partisan, so you can find out what I just discovered the other day. Before I get to what I discovered, let's just reaffirm the values that I'm speaking of that are so offended by this discovery. See, I believe in what Dennis Prager calls the American Trinity. I believe in liberty, that in God we trust, and e pluribus unum, that is from many, one. You see, American nationalism is not like European nationalism. Over there, it's about blood and soil. In America, it's all about beliefs and ideas. We are a melting pot of many ethnicities from many nations, and we take the very best and incorporate it and make it part of America. And anyone that wants to come to the United States and love the United States and assimilate and hold dear to those ideas and those values that bind us all, e pluribus unum, from many one, you are welcome to declare yourself a fellow American. I get those beliefs from the American founding documents, and more importantly from the same source where they got their beliefs, the Bible. According to the Bible, this whole race concept, it's a false construct. There's no such thing as race. There's one race, and that's the human race. I believe that all people are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all deserve equality under the law, but we also share the same responsibility under the law. These values don't belong to any one master race. They're ideas, they're beliefs, they're values which can be embraced by any and every American. Any one of us can adopt the Protestant work ethic and succeed in this land of opportunity. We are all the same. We should treat each other the same. And race is a concept which should just be left on the trash heap of history. Unfortunately, these beliefs aren't shared by all. There are large segments in our society that think there's actual inherent differences inborn in the very DNA of different races. They believe that only whites care about family, that only whites care about science, only whites are willing to work hard, only whites can be Christian, and only whites can hold to these higher values which I just described. Now, working 26 years in law enforcement, I'm aware that people are evil. So as long as those people are outside the power structures, outside of government, do they disgust me? Yes. Is it a major threat? Not really. But if these ideas actually get into the government and start to get indoctrinated into our people, they are a terrible, terrible threat to the United States. And this is where I come to this document, which I discovered yesterday, which was made official last month. Now, like I said in the beginning, I've been a loyal Republican since I hit puberty. And if you've been loyal to your party, you need to sit through this whole video and make a clear decision at the end. And when you find out what was written, you have to seriously think about walking away. So here's a document. It's titled Aspects and Assumptions of Whiteness and White Culture in the United States. The document calls white the dominant culture. There's no recognition here that there's really no such thing as white culture, because white people came from various countries, different ethnicities that all throughout history were often at war with each other, have very different languages, customs, beliefs, tastes, values, everything, and we only took the very best here in America. It has nothing to do with color. It's kind of silly to call that. And also, as a side note, I can't help but notice as a veteran that the flag is hung improperly. So once again, this is something you see from fake patriots. Now, to start this pamphlet of propaganda, they begin with probably the most American characteristics you can think of: rugged individualness. Now, these people claim that it's an exclusively white trait, that only whites value their individuality and independence, that only whites seek to be self-reliant, and per this disgusting diatribe, only whites believe that they're in control of their own destiny, and only whites believe they get what they deserve. Hello, morons! John Wayne wasn't a real cowboy, he was an actor. And according to the February 2019 Milwaukee Independent, 1/4 of all the real-life American cowboys were actually black. I'll read an excerpt from Nat Love's autobiography. It says he moved massive herds of cattle from one grazing area to another, drank with Billy the Kid, and participated in shootouts with native peoples defending their land on the trails. And when not, as he put it, engaged in fighting Indians, he amused himself with activities like daredevil riding, shooting, roping, and such sports. Though Love's tales from the frontiers seem typical for a 19th century cowboy, they come from a source rarely associated with the Wild West. Love was an African American, born into slavery near Nashville, Tennessee. So rugged individualism is hardly a white trait, it is a masculine trait, and it is an American trait. And now, one of the favorite stereotypes. According to the people that wrote this, the nuclear family with a father as the head of the household and providing for his family with a loyal and supportive wife, blacks just aren't interested in that. Apparently to these guys, this is a white thing and not just a Bible thing. Now, is there a horrifying epidemic of out-of-wedlock births within the black community? Yes, I can't deny that. According to the National Center for Human Health Standards, said that by 2015, over 77% of all non-immigrant blacks were born out of wedlock. Now, I have no doubt that that statistic, and not some inherent genetic difference or blood difference, is the source of all the other complaints we see in the rest of this document. Because God designed the family with the need of both a mother and a father, or at least a father figure. So, if there is this terrible problem, and it's not specific to the black race, whose fault is it? Some say it goes all the way back to slavers dividing the families. But if that was the case, the further back in time we go, the worse the problem would be, and the more we move forward, the better off we would be. That's not what we see. You see, as late as 1938, the illegitimate birth rate within the black community was only 11%. Now, there was a little bit of an increase as we moved towards 1965. It did rise to 21%, but the direct, irrefutable, sudden change of trajectory, the culprit which destroyed the black family, was LBJ's Great Society and his war on poverty, with these terribly destructive Democrat welfare policies, which actually incentivize the disintegration of the family. In fact, if you go back to the 1950s, black females were more likely to be married than white females. So, we need to put the blame where it belongs. It has nothing to do with skin, and has everything to do with horrendous, destructive Democrat policies. And it gets even worse. It appears that the people that wrote this want to ensure that no one ever hires any black people for work. According to this racist nonsense, only whites believe in hard work. And CPT, which is colored people time, isn't just something for stand-up comedians to joke about. According to them, it's the real thing. According to these guys, if you plan for the future, delay gratification, follow rigid time schedules, and see time as a commodity, you must be thinking like a white person. They actually use the term Protestant work ethic and attach Protestant values to skin color instead of deep religious faith. So I guess according to them, blacks can't even be Christian? Holy moly, that is what they're saying. I can't believe this. Even though Jesus Christ was a woolly-haired, dark-skinned, Middle Eastern Jew, they want to make Christianity out to be the white man's religion. I would think this was written by the Ku Klux Klan itself. This is unbelievable. And you notice how they wrote God with a small g? The same as in the beginning, I said the flag being hung improperly kind of indicates that they're not real patriots. Well, with that small g, really tells me what they believe about the sovereign God of the universe. I can't even take this anymore, but I got to cover one more before I wrap it up. Not only do they say that Christianity is exclusively the purview of whites, they want to make them the only ones who believe in science as well. So he's basically covered all foundations of thought. According to them, only whites believe in objective, rational thought and scientific method. It's unfathomable. Now, I'll admit, I have experienced a lot of conversations lately, and a terrible trend of people losing all ability to objectively look at issues and do a factual analysis and take away the emotionalism of an issue. In fact, just yesterday, I got accused once again of being a racist and called a racist the worst kind of racist because I bring my facts to the table. And arguments where they refuse to even look at anything that'll threaten a paradigm because they want to cling on to their emotional belief and the thing that I guess makes them part of their identity. But that's not a black thing or a white thing. That's basically a left versus a right thing. Liberalism is all about how you feel about an issue. Conservatism is all about looking at what reality actually is. And this is where I make my point. This is where I lift the veil and I uncover the truth. Are you pissed about everything you've heard so far? I hope you are. I am. And at the beginning of this, I said that I would disavow any ideology that believes this garbage. And if I found out it came from my party, I would walk away forever. I hope you made that same commitment because this racist insanity is from a tax-funded government institution. Are you ready to hear who published it? Last month, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is part of the Smithsonian, released an entire web series, entire section online dedicated to this false and horrifyingly destructive paradigm. Now, for years, we've had to put up with the nonsense projection from the left calling us racists. Conservatives don't think like this. We don't think in terms of color. Those ideas are abhorrent. We believe in Christ and the Constitution. Do you? If you do, that makes you conservative, not white. We do believe in individual dignity as opposed to subscribing to the collective. If you prefer the collective, that makes you a communist, not black. If you agree with Ben Shapiro that facts simply don't care about your feelings, that makes you conservative, not white. We do believe in the Protestant work ethic. We do believe that if you apply yourself, that if you show up on time, that if you work hard, and that if you do the right thing, you can succeed in the freest and most prosperous nation the world has ever seen. Do you think you need to reject your blackness to do the same? If not, guess what? You're actually a conservative. And here's what I left out from the original presentation. Per these Marxist radicals, if you believe that intent is actually an important aspect in criminal law, and if you respect private property, and you believe in the principles of common law, you must be white. Now, if you call BS on that one the same as I do, and I sure hope you do, guess what? You're actually conservative. I've talked about all this before, and I'll talk about it again, ring the bell till everyone hears it. This is not about race. It's about the Fabian socialist incursion into the United States. They're trying to divide and conquer us, and they're using blacks as pawns in their efforts to destroy America. Now, why do you think this document attacks objective, rational thought? It's called critical theory. It's from the Frankfurt School in Germany. It's a bunch of socialists that came here about 80 years ago. Now, in critical theory, they take critical thinking and throw it away. Because according to critical theory, everything, be it science, art, philosophy, politics, all of academia, everything is guided towards freeing the allegedly oppressed. And in that struggle, in that goal, facts don't matter. Critical race theory, which is an offshoot of it, is like we see in the 1619 Project. And that critical race theory allows you to completely rewrite history and throw away objective reality and rewrite current events if it serves the ultimate purpose of toppling the prevailing power structure. In other words, as long as it will destroy the United States. So what? It's just an exhibit. Not that many people go to the Smithsonian anyway, or log online and look at this educational stuff. You take it or leave it. No one's forcing you to do it. Well, that's not true. This month, the city of Seattle forced only their white employees, so it's forced government segregation, to sit through a seminar where they had to renounce their whiteness. Not renounce racism, I'm cool with that, but their actual whiteness. Now remember, by whiteness, what do they mean? They mean objectivity, individualism, and intellectualization. In other words, we are at the state now of Orwell's 1984, where Big Brother wants to punish you not for physical crimes you commit in the street, but actual thought crimes. To the left, if you're black, You're guilty of thinking white if you love America and you do what it takes to succeed. So I ask you, who is controlling the black community? Is it the Emancipation Party, the Republicans, who might not give you adequate empathy, but they encourage you to stand up on your own 2 feet and strive for success, confident that if you do your very best, you will. They want to stand side by side with you together as we salute the flag as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Or is it the left who institutionalize systems which trap you in poverty, removing fathers from the home, and then admonish you not to accept the universal values which will actually enable you to succeed? This is all mind control. Now, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. And I told you that these nefarious forces have been at work within the United States for over a century. So let's jump back to 1968 as we come to a close.
Now, here is a book that I think ought to be in every home library. It's entitled Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson. Manning Johnson was a Negro, and he was also a member of the Communist Party. He joined the party as a young man because he honestly believed that the communists were trying to improve the conditions of his people. He was a dedicated communist. But after many years, Manning Johnson finally came to the realization that the communists weren't the least bit interested in improving the conditions of the Negro people. He discovered that instead they were merely planning to use his people, and these are his words, to use them as cannon fodder in a bloody revolution to destroy America. As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We must not be led into placing the blame for the riots, the civil disorders, on the Negro people of our nation. Even those few who are promoting hatred and violence in the black communities are not themselves the cause. They're merely being used by forces far bigger than they are to promote the violent phase of the revolution in America. Hoping to avoid further violence and bloodshed, the public is to be pressured into accepting measures that will move the country gradually and legally toward communism, but without calling it that. The strategy of the proletarian revolution calls for the quiet conversion of our government into a communist regime, but under the banner of socialism. The new program of the Communist Party on this subject has this to say. The term socialism describes but the first stage of a new society that in its full development is called communism. Socialism is a transitional stage. The building of socialism is the communist revolution in America. It represents the process whereby our country can be moved gradually toward communism without the people even being aware of it. They have one and only one solution for all problems: more government, and then more and more until it's total government. Total government is communism. We must not be fooled into thinking that the causes of our civil turmoil are such things as poverty, poor housing, lack of education, and similar social or economic factors. As a matter of fact, most of today's self-styled revolutionaries, black and white, come from good homes, could earn better than average incomes if they wanted to work. And in fact, they're products of some of the finest institutions of higher learning. We mustn't resort to violence either as a means of furthering political or social goals. And we must do everything humanly possible to discourage others from doing so. We must support our local police. Nothing can be quite so damaging to police morale and efficiency as converting every arrest into a trial of the policeman instead of the criminal. Now, in passing, ladies and gentlemen, you may have wondered why the Communist Party has been a staunch supporter of the drive to place a black studies curriculum into our high schools and colleges. Well, the reason becomes obvious the minute you take a look at the textbooks and the study guides. Under the guise of academic balance, these courses have become a brilliant device for conditioning young people to accept still one more part of the total program for revolution. We must discover the identity of those individuals, both above and below, who consciously are furthering the communist program for revolution, and then remove them from their positions of trust and leadership. Now, of course, the minute you begin to think along these lines, you'll become the target of a whole barrage of attacks. You'll be called a right-wing extremist, a fascist, or at least a dictator. Some years ago, I happened to attend a meeting where several anti-communist refugees from behind the Iron Curtain were called upon to relate their personal experiences. One of the refugees spoke up and he said, "You know, I came to America expecting to find a nation of free men, but instead, I find exactly the same thing. Everywhere I look, I see men and women who know that communists are making headway in this country. They know that something must be done and that someone must stand up to them. But they themselves do nothing. They remain silent because they're afraid that if they speak out or take a stand publicly, it'll be bad for business. They may lose a client. They may even lose their jobs. If communism should ever come to America, we'll face more death, destruction, and human suffering than any people in history has ever faced at the hands of their invading conquerors. It's literally a question of life and death for all of us. And it's about time the American people began to face up to that fact and to act accordingly." Thank you.